All right, where to start? With the Olympics occurring over the summer, it has been brought to the forefront again of a bad faith talking point that has gained steam over the last few years. And I'm here to kind of point out that it's very bad faith because there is a ton of evidence against it. There's so much evidence that I really struggled to figure out how much to actually include in this, because I know a lot of the people that are actually pushing this bad faith argument don't actually give a shit about evidence and any of that. So today, I'm here to tell you that the trans athlete panic is fake, and it's meant to keep people divided, particularly the working class, and pit working class people against one another. Trans people are a marginalized class within society. There's not really a lot of them. As someone who is an ally for the community, I'm still not quite sure of every little detail. However, I am empathetic and the lives that they live. So that's why I choose to defend the people that are not as privileged as myself, to be able to just live their lives without anybody denying their existence. So the reason this whole controversy came up is because there's an Algerian boxer, Iman Khalif, who was at the Olympics, and her first bout, she kind of threw a punch against her opponent, and her opponent immediately retreated to her corner and quit the match. Oh, I've never gotten hit like that before. This isn't fair, blah, blah, blah. She was implying that Iman was not actually a woman. That's very loaded, considering that Algeria, it is illegal to be transgender. Iman is a cisgender woman, and the Olympic Committee has come out and said that. Ultimately, these attacks on transgender athletes will eventually turn their sights onto cisgender women. We're seeing it with the Olympics now. The U.S. women's rugby team has an athlete named Ilona Mayer, who has helped lead her team to a bronze medal within the Olympics. She has stated she's been getting comments being called a man, being called masculine, and asking if she's on steroids. There's always going to be negative people out there, and they put women in a box. And they think women should be fragile, petite, and quiet, and meek. It's not the case. Alona's right. The underlying premise of these arguments are sexist and misogynistic. These people that make these arguments do not like when things fall outside of their very limited perspective. These are elite athletes pushing their body to their utmost potential. So when there is a person who does not fall into what they think a woman should look like, they lash out. Those of us who are privileged do not have to deal with this bullshit. We need to push back on that. Another thing that has happened is Katie Ledecky, the most decorated women's swimmer in all of American history. They are now thinking that she is transgender. On Facebook, a post from ESPN celebrating Ledecky's gold in 1500-meter freestyle was met with multiple comments calling her a man. I feel so bad for the women on the U.S. swim team who were cheated out of their place in a sport by someone born male, beating them out, one woman wrote. Katie Ledecky has been winning medals for the last couple Olympics. Why is it coming out now? So you might ask, where has this attack on transgender athletes come from? And what's the motivations behind it? Well, the New York Times article spoke about it. This all kind of stems from when the Supreme Court allowed same-gender marriage in 2015. The Republican Party and conservatives needed a wedge issue that they could all rally around, because same-sex marriage was pretty much settled by law and within society itself. So in 2016, North Carolina legislators voted to bar transgender people from using the bathroom. There was severe backlash to this bill, so much so that the NBA moved their All-Star game out of North Carolina, and the NCAA threatened to remove championships out of the state of North Carolina. Other corporations and even Bruce Springsteen pressured the state to rescind the bill. Even Donald Trump at the time didn't agree with this bill.
Caitlyn Jenner were to walk into Trump Tower and want to use the bathroom, you would be fine with her using any bathroom she chooses.
That is correct.
Donald Trump even disagreed with the bill. After this bill flopped, they went looking for a new approach to the issue. Mr. Sheeling's organization, for example, conducted polling to determine whether curbing transgender rights had resonance with voters, and if they did, the best way for candidates to talk about it. In 2019, the group's research found that voters were significantly more likely to support a Republican candidate who favored a ban on transgender girls participating in school sports, particularly when framed as a question of whether to allow men and boys to compete against women and girls. Then a candidate pushing for a ban of transgender people using a bathroom of their choosing. This entire argument was manufactured to make you emotional, to not look at the data. Well, I'm going to give you some of the data. The Olympics have allowed transgender athletes to compete in women's sports since 2004. Since that time, there's been 50,000 athletes that have competed in the Olympics and the Paralympics. Do you want to know the percentage of transgender athletes within those Olympics? 0.002%. So you're going to say, oh, yeah, that's a very small percentage, but they won all their events, right? They all won gold medals because they totally have an advantage. Well, I hate to break it to you. Transgender athletes have won 0 medals since they've been allowed to openly compete in the Olympics in 2004. 0. There is 1 medal won by a transgender non-binary, and that was on the Canadian women's soccer team on a team event. That's it. That's the only gold medal. These people's entire argument that transgender athletes should not compete in women's sports falls apart based on that premise alone. They claim that transgender athletes are destroying records and winning all kinds of events, all kinds of championships. If transgender athletes have this much of an advantage, shouldn't they be winning more medals? If transgender athletes have this much of an advantage, why isn't traditional powers like Russia and China having trans athletes compete in women's sports to win medals and make their country look better? Why wouldn't they do that? So with their arguments, they claim men can just go into women's sports and just say they identify as women to win championships. However, found out that's not true. Ben Shapiro, who's in charge of the Daily Water and who has been making these arguments, created a movie called Lady Ballers. The entire premise of the movie is that there are men identify as women to compete in a women's basketball. The original plan for this was to make a documentary of this and actually do this in real life. Watch this video where Ben Shapiro himself destroys that argument that men can just waltz into women's sports just to win championships.
You approached me and you said we should make a fictional film about this topic. Now, to be fair, I think I'd actually suggested to the Crane Boys that they do this as a doc.
Yes.
I originally went to them and I said, you guys should go try out for a bunch of ladies' leagues. And that became not possible because, as it turns out, most ladies' leagues don't allow in actual men. And they weren't willing to go the full distance in terms of what it would require in order to, the actual hormone treatments and everything to play in some of the ladies' leagues. But in any case, it turned into this.
There it is. Ben himself acknowledging that men can't just walk into a women's sports league without going through hormone replacement therapy and all the other things that transgender athletes go through in order to compete. Is that not enough evidence for you? Forbes here is reporting on a study published within the British Journal of Sports Medicine. The significant findings within the study finds that transgender women perform worse than cisgender women in tests measuring lower body strength. Transgender women perform worse than cisgender women in tests measuring lung function. Transgender women had a higher percentage of fat mass, lower fat-free mass, and weaker hand grip strength compared to cisgender men. Transgender women's bones density was found to be equivalent to that of cisgender women, which is linked to muscle strength. There were no meaningful differences found between the two groups' hemoglobin profiles. Hemoglobin plays a crucial role in athletic performance by facilitating improved oxygen delivery to muscles. Elite endurance athletes may exhibit up to a 40% higher level of hemoglobin compared to untrained individuals. Moreover, heightened levels of hemoglobin typically correlate with enhanced aerobic performance. So this study found that transgender women don't actually have an advantage over cisgender women. I don't know how much more you need me to say. The Utah governor himself, Governor Spencer Cox, vetoed a bill that the legislation put on his desk to prevent transgender teenagers from competing within girls' sports. So he looked into the details a little bit more. He found that there were 75,000 high school kids participating within the high school in Utah. Within those 75,000 athletes in the state of Utah, 4 of them were transgender. Within those 4 transgender athletes, 1 of them was playing girls' sports. 1. The entire bill was written for 1 athlete. You might ask, why did I say we should allow transgender athletes to be part of the community? Because trans youth see some of the highest suicide rates. The Utah governor himself showed in his letter that 86% of trans youth reported suicidality and 56% of trans youth attempted suicide. No one is going to go through all it takes just to get a trophy. This doesn't happen. They're just competing in sports. It's the same argument people made during the North Carolina bathroom bill, claiming that people were going to transition to go into the bathroom and women. No, if you're not going to transition. You're just going to go into the bathroom and do it. The hoops that they jump through, the obstacles, the gymnastics that they do, they should join the Olympics themselves for how much they bend over backwards to try to make this narrative stick, despite the evidence pointing to the contrary. But this is where we're at because people want to continue to not let you live your life the way you'd like to live your life because it doesn't fall into their rigid norms, that they can't see any other way to live your life. Just let people live. Why is this so hard? Let people do what they want to do. You continue to claim that you're the party of freedom, but you keep passing these laws to not let people be who they want to be, not marry who they want to marry, not live as they see who they are, to not allow medical care, to not allow abortion. You're the party of freedom. So allow people to make their own choices with their doctors. As I stated, it is important to allow trans youth to be accepted within a community. Transgender youth should not be shut off from this. As the Human Rights Campaign states, playing sports helps young people maintain good physical health, build self-confidence and self-esteem, grow leadership skills, understand the value of teamwork, and much more. The ACLU has stated that including trans athletes benefit everyone. The participation of trans athletes does not hurt cis women. The exclusion of trans athletes will actually hurt cis women. These people that are calling for the exclusion of transgender athletes are also passing bills to allow genital inspections on youth. In this Ohio bill, it technically says anyone can accuse someone of being transgender and prompting a chain reaction. Once inspected, the girl or woman has to give a signed physician statement indicating their sex based on those 3 evaluations, according to the bill. Advocates will say that it will traumatize young people and cause a huge ripple effect on competitions in general. This Ohio bill opens the door to accusing people of being transgender and subjecting them to inspection of external and internal genitalia, testosterone levels, and genetic makeup. How many times do you think a cis person will be accused and found to be cis? If there's a small minority of trans people within society itself, wouldn't that mean that cisgendered people would be probably getting inspected the most? And we'd be subject to someone inspecting their genitalia and everything? This shit's weird. The people that are promoting that transgender athletes should be excluded are pushing for genital inspection days. Why are we allowing this as a society? Why are you talking about children's genitals? What is wrong with you? So these bills that state legislatures are pushing lead to results that they're not looking for. For example, there was a 17-year-old transgender boy who won the Texas Girls Wrestling Championship because this boy was assigned female at birth. And according to Texas law, the boy had to wrestle within the girls division. This boy had done hormone replacement therapy, was taking testosterone. This boy ended up winning a state title and got jeers from the crowd. As the reporter states, the boy wanted to wrestle with the boys. The boy did not want to wrestle within the girls division, but was forced to by the state legislature who passed this bill. The bill was passed out of bigotry. And now this boy won a state title within the girls division. I'm not expecting you to change your mind, but you can't have an opinion based solely on vibes. When there's this much evidence slapping you in the face that this narrative probably isn't correct, the narrative probably isn't correct. So some people have profited from this. One of the people I'm talking about is Riley Gaines. Riley Gaines came to prominence because she tied 5th place with Leah Thomas, who was a trans woman swimming for the University of Pennsylvania. Riley Gaines threw a big hissy fit that she tied with Leah Thomas and claiming Leah Thomas was far superior to all the other women that were in the event. Apparently, Riley Gaines forgot that there was 4 other cis women that beat her and Leah Thomas in the event. So are those 4 other cis women also transgender? Because those 4 cis women beat Leah Thomas, a trans woman. Riley Gaines, maybe you should have worked harder. Then you could have beat the other 4 cis women that beat Leah Thomas. But nope, she turned it around and is making a ton of money in the bigotry and hate to divide working class people. Because when working class people are divided, the wealthy laugh all the way to the bank. We are the working class. There are more of us than there are of them. When they divide us, we beg for crumbs. But when we are united together, we get our value that we create with our labor. Right now, that value we create as workers is going to the wealthy's pocket. Those of us who are not oppressed need to stand up for our fellow brethren. We are brothers and sisters and MBs in arms. As long as we continue to allow these bad faith talking points to divide the working class. We will continue to beg for crumbs.